Top 4 Creepiest Abandoned Places in Americas. Lies the ghost town of Calico. This Silver Rush ghost town rose and fell in under a decade. Silver was discovered in the Calico-covered mountains in 1881, but the Silver Purchase Act was enacted in 1890, driving down the price of silver. At its height of silver production in the mid-1800s, the town had 500 mines and about 1,200 residents. Brothels and boarding houses abounded. By 1890, the population was a booming 3,500, with residents from all over the world. The post office and schoolhouse closed in 1898. By 1907, Calico was a ghost town. Calico is now a county regional park, and some work has been done to restore the buildings to their Silver Rush glory. There is also a museum in Calico, and a handful of multi-million-dollar villas have been built in the distance, but the town is still more authentic feeling than kitschy. Also, how cool would it be to live next to a ghost town? Route 66 spelled doom for this town. Glenrio. The Chicago Rock Island and Pacific Railroad came through in 1901 and the town of Glenrio was born shortly after. Glenrio had a hardware store, a newspaper, a few cafes, a hotel, several service stations and grocery stores. This town often used its being on the state line to its advantage. The state line bar and hotel were built on the New Mexico side because Texas was dry at the time, and all of Glenrio's service stations were built on the Texas side because gas prices were lower in Texas. Ultimately, the interstate highway was the death of this railroad town. Once Route 66 was completed, Glenrio survived as a tourist destination for some time, with its first motel in Texas, last motel in Texas on the state line. However, the completion of I-40 was the final blow to this small town, because the route bypassed the community entirely. The permanent population never exceeded 30, and only 2 residents remained by 1985. 3. A ghost town that is part of an art situation in the Mojave Desert. Rhyolite. Rhyolite had a short few years of its reigns of glory in the early 1900s. At its peak, it had an opera house, 45 saloons, quite a few dance halls, and 2 railroad depots. However, the financial panic of 1907 meant that nearly all of its residents caught the last train out of town. Rhyolite's last resident died in 1924. Now, it is more or less part of the experience of the art situation that lies just on its outskirts. Rhyolite lies on the road leading to Death Valley. The art situation was created in the 80s by prominent Belgian artists with a desire to create an outdoor sculpture park. These colossal sculptures create a nearly surreal ambience, and seem strangely out of place on the side of the road in the middle of the desert. 4. The railroad pulled up its tracks and took the townspeople with it. The first white settlers, mostly trappers and prospectors, arrived in St. Elmo in the 1870s. The mining boom hit and the population quickly exploded to 2,000 by 1881. At its peak, St. Elmo had a general store, telegraph office, 5 saloons, several dancing halls, a newspaper office and a schoolhouse. The mining industry shut down, and St. Elmo quickly declined. The last train departed from St. Elmo and traveled through Alpine Tunnel for the last time on the 4th of July in 1910. The railroad pulled up the tracks in 1927, and most of the townspeople went with it. Postal service to St. Elmo discontinued in 1952, after the death of its final postmaster. Only 2 residents remained by the late 1950s, brother and sister Tony and Annabelle Stark.